started this whole poster project with a 6-month tour of Mesoamerica, visiting the communities on the front lines of resistance to these projects. And one of the things that people told us again and again, independently of one another, was that if we were going to illustrate their struggles, we had to have the ancestors presenting, right? Not only to represent the presence of ancestors within Mesoamerican cultures, but also because the people that we spoke to identified as being in the same struggle as their grandparents and their grandparents before them. And it was a struggle against colonization. They saw it all very clearly. I teased that, back then we were in the anti-globalization era, using globalization as a bridge to talk about colonialism. And these days, everyone's talking about colonialism, but no one talks about globalization. And so we're using colonialism as a way to talk about globalization, right? Like these issues of global justice and global solidarity. Now, also spiraling around the tree are these ants. And there's over 70 different species of ants and over 400 different species of animals illustrated on the inside of this graphic. Our 10-year anniversary reprint actually includes a species map that has all 400 different species with their local name, their English name, and their scientific name written on it. So that you could find a cute animal that you like and easily figure out exactly what species it is. And we did that to showcase and to juxtapose the mono-vision of development versus the diversity of the grassroots, right? And it's a theme that's repeated throughout the piece. That it's in diversity that we find strength, and it's in diversity that we're going to find solutions to issues that we face, such as climate change. One no, many yeses. That's the principle of the Zapatistas. And in fact, the leafcutter species of ants are all carrying these blades of grass that have the Zapatista principles of organizing written on them. NAFTA went into effect. January 1st, 1994, because they were protesting NAFTA. It was a great opportunity to speak to the world about the issues that they faced. It wasn't just NAFTA, it was years of oppression, segregation, of being treated very poorly as indigenous people in Mexico. And so, on this day, January 1st, while the rich were recovering from their hangovers from their parties the night before, the Zapatistas went in and took over, militarily occupied multiple cities and took over the government buildings in 5 cities. And they declared war against the Mexican government. But it's important to note that they have a principle which is to exercise power, not to take power. So it wasn't their goal to overthrow the government of Mexico, right, or hold on to those government buildings indefinitely. But they had an uprising for indigenous rights. And it was a strategy of the supporters around the country to mobilize these huge protests to demand that their government sign peace accords, which the Zapatistas, wanted to be respected in that way. And these peace accords were signed, but they were never ratified by the Mexican government. That's why the word is so important to them. They stood by their word, of stopping fighting. But then the government constantly disappointed them. Composting, they're making beeswax candles because they're taking advantage of the resources they have access to. Planting a permaculture garden, making their own paper. And here they're making other pollinator habitats, right? So these bees are making habitats for birds and bats. And it's a beautiful illustration of what it is to be a solidarity economy. Because these pollinators know that if they're creating a healthy environment for other pollinators, that's going to be a healthier environment for them to live in as well, right? If only we had such a view towards poverty or homelessness, knowing that when there is suffering in our community, it's our whole community that's suffering from that. And then down here, they're talking about distributing their goods to other front lines, right? Material solidarity. Like the Zapatistas delivered this whole truck full of corn once to this community that I was in that was protesting a mega highway going through it. And, they realized that when you're a community in struggle, you have less energy to put towards putting food on the table and taking care of your kids. And so that material support is so essential. So here we have the traditional uses of water. This vulva-like cave is the birthing scene, talking about the importance of midwifery and traditional medicines in maintaining one's autonomy, right? Not having your health linked to these institutions that are largely found in cities. Here we're talking about archiving historic memory with tapestry, arts, music, murals, the spoken word. The celebration scene, the fiesta, with the 4 elements in all the different stages of life. It's an intergenerational gathering. Here we're talking about the assembly where everyone has a voice, solidarity economics, and then down here is the traditional market. And what people don't typically first notice about this scene is that in this market, all of the merchants are pollinators, and they're actually paired with the plant that they're pollinating. So the yucca moth is selling yucca at the market. It's the only pollinator of that plant. And the fruit bat is making papaya smoothies on its pedal-powered blender. And while all of the merchants are pollinators, all of the customers are seed dispersers. So it's their role to poop out the seeds encased in fertilizer. And so the system of pollination and seed dispersion becomes a metaphor for the role of a traditional market in an ecosystem. The buying and selling of organic food and seeds, and the strength of that market is represented by this DNA, right? The biodiversity that it upholds. But you can see that DNA is being threatened by these monocultures filled with shopping carts of palm, GMO soy, and GMO corn. And over here, the market is being raided by this processed food, but held back with all of the trash associated with that processed food. And so here we have this tale of 2 food systems. We have one that actually contributes to the local ecology, and one that depletes soil over time, that pollutes nearby water, and with over-fertilization, and of course in this region is responsible for the displacement of populations. And over here, it is also responsible for creating a lot of waste. And it's also a reminder that so many of the solutions, I feel like in our society we're always trying to go more high-tech, with the solutions that we have, but compare this to I don't know if you went over the mansion scene, the true cost of coal with everyone in the gated community, with like the solar panels, the plug-in cars and everything. This is obviously way more sustainable, right? Low-tech, close to the earth, and the people, in many of the places that we went, the people who live like this are fighting with their lives to preserve these ways of life and to stop their land they grow food on from being taken by this huge extractivist projects or infrastructure development.